Welcome back to NT Coins World, your go-to place for everything coin-related. Today, we're diving into two fascinating Roosevelt dimes, the 1968D and the 1974D Roosevelt dimes, both in fine condition. These two coins are often overlooked by collectors, but today, we'll uncover just how much they could be worth and what makes them special. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or a new collector, these dimes might surprise you with their hidden value. So, grab your magnifying glass and let's get started. Let's begin with the 1968D Roosevelt dime, struck at the Denver Mint. The 1968D is part of the larger Roosevelt dime series that has been circulating since 1946, featuring President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse. This dime, like others from the series, is made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, which was introduced in 1965 when the US moved away from silver coinage. Now let's talk about its mintage. The 1968D Roosevelt dime had a total mintage of around 310 million coins, making it one of the more common dimes in circulation from that era. Despite its large mintage, coins in fine condition are often sought after by collectors due to their historical significance. But why should you care about a dime with such a high mintage? Well, the value of this coin is not solely about rarity, it's also about the demand for coins in certain conditions, especially when they are well preserved. In fine condition, the 1968D Roosevelt dime shows signs of wear but still retains a decent amount of detail. The liberty on the obverse and the elements of the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse are visible, albeit with softened edges and some flatness on the high points. While fine condition coins aren't as valuable as higher grade specimens, they can still fetch a respectable price. At the time of writing, the 1968D Roosevelt dime in fine condition is valued at around $1 to $3. But what makes it stand out is its potential for value appreciation. Dimes from this era, especially with certain die varieties or mint errors, can experience significant spikes in value if they're in excellent or higher grades. For example, if you're lucky enough to come across one that is in MS65, mint state, or higher, the value could easily rise into the $15 to $50 range, depending on demand. However, in fine condition, it remains a fairly affordable piece for collectors who are just starting to build their collection. One interesting thing about the 1968D Roosevelt dime is that it marks the transition to the clad composition, as the US Mint was no longer using silver for circulating coins. This makes the 1968D Roosevelt dime a key coin in the history of American numismatics, bridging the gap between the silver era and the modern clad coinage we see today. Because of this, it holds sentimental value for many collectors who specialize in post-silver US coins. Another thing worth mentioning is that while the 1968D is not one of the rarest dimes in the series, it's still important to remember that small errors or unique varieties could make this coin more valuable. For instance, if your 1968D has a doubled die or any noticeable striking issues, such as a partial or off-center strike, these could add substantial value to your coin. A doubled die can increase the price of a Roosevelt dime by as much as $50 to $100, depending on the severity and visibility of the doubling. Collectors also often look for dimes from this period with higher grades, particularly those that were carefully preserved right after minting. Coins that were not circulated heavily and thus show fewer signs of wear are far more valuable. However, in fine condition, the 1968D Roosevelt dime is an excellent example of how large mintage coins still hold appeal due to their historical context and potential for discovery of errors or varieties. Now that we've explored the 1968D Roosevelt dime, let's move forward in time and examine another dime from a slightly later period, the 1974D Roosevelt dime. This coin, struck at the Denver Mint as well, carries its own unique set of characteristics, and though it shares similarities with the 1968D, it's worth looking at how its value and appeal stack up in the world of numismatics. The 1974D Roosevelt dime is another coin from the Denver Mint, and much like the 1968D, it was struck in the copper-nickel-clad composition. The design, featuring President Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, remains the same as its predecessors. This coin, however, is part of a different era, taking place during the mid-1970s, a time when inflation was on the rise and the US Mint was continuing its work with clad coinage after the end of the silver era. In terms of mintage, the 1974D Roosevelt dime had a total mintage of about 334 million coins. Like the 1968D, this high mintage suggests that, in general, this is a fairly common coin. The 1974D Roosevelt dime's primary appeal lies in its role within the coinage of the early 1970s and its place within the larger Roosevelt dime series. In fine condition, the 1974D Roosevelt dime shows signs of circulation, with noticeable wear on the details. The obverse features Roosevelt's profile, but the finer details of his hair and face may be worn down, and the reverse may have the same loss of definition, particularly around the torch and branches. Even with these signs of wear, the 1974D Roosevelt dime is still a desirable coin for many collectors, particularly those focusing on obtaining coins from this era in decent condition. At the time of writing, the 1974D Roosevelt dime in fine condition typically holds a value of around $1 to $3, similar to the 1968D dime. However, as with the 1968D, this value can increase dramatically depending on the coin's grade. If you happen to have a 1974D Roosevelt dime in higher grades, such as MS65 or MS66, you could see values ranging from $10 to $20 or more. This makes the 1974D an affordable yet potentially rewarding coin for those who are looking to upgrade their collection over time. One key difference between the 1974D and the 1968D Roosevelt dime is that the 1974D is slightly newer, meaning it may be less prone to certain varieties or errors, though errors do still exist. For example, you might find 1974D dimes with misaligned dies doubling on the lettering or slight off-center strikes. Coins with such errors can become highly desirable among collectors and could be worth $20 to $100 or even more, depending on the nature of the error. The 1974D also marks a pivotal time in US coinage. As inflation hit during this decade, there were more conversations about the future of coinage, and the Roosevelt dime was, in many ways, a stable part of the coin system. It's a great piece to own for anyone interested in the economic context of the 1970s and the evolution of US currency. Both the 1968D and 1974D Roosevelt dimes, despite their relatively high mintage numbers, are fantastic examples of post-silver US coinage. These dimes serve as an important bridge between the silver era and the modern clad coinage we see today. While they may not be the most valuable coins in the series, they still hold great appeal for collectors who appreciate their historical context and the potential for discovering unique errors or varieties. Whether you're just starting out or looking to fill in your collection, these dimes are affordable yet fascinating coins that could be worth more in the future. If you enjoyed learning about these two Roosevelt dimes, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos. We'll keep diving into the world of coins, unearthing the hidden gems and stories behind them. Stay tuned for more, and until next time, keep collecting.